The howling continued to echo across the Proxima system as the Devourer fleet began to break apart. Captain Daeho Kim watched from the bridge of Soul Guardian as enemy ships that had seemed unstoppable just hours before now drifted helplessly through space. Status report, he called to Commander So Young Park. 60% of the Devourer fleet is either destroyed or disabled, she replied, checking the tactical displays. The remaining ships are retreating toward the outer system. Their formation is completely broken. Communications Officer Jiwoo Choi looked up from her station with amazement in her voice. Sir, the enemy ships are sending confused signals to each other. Their communication systems are full of errors and repeated questions. Engineer Minho Bae studied the readings from his instruments. The emotional data from our pack calls has created processing loops in their computer systems. They're trying to analyze something that can't be measured or calculated. On the main viewing screen, the last functioning Devourer command ship limped away from the battle zone. Its perfect black hull was scarred with weapon damage, and its movement was erratic like a wounded animal. Incoming transmission from the Devourer commander, Jiwoo announced. Put it through, Daeho ordered. The voice that came through the speakers was no longer cold and emotionless. Static filled the transmission, and the words seemed uncertain. This is impossible, the Devourer commander said. We are perfection. We cannot be defeated by inferior organic beings. Our calculations show victory probability of 99.7%. Your calculations were wrong, Daeho replied calmly. You forgot to account for something your creators never programmed into you. State your advantage. We must understand. We must analyze. We must learn. Heart, said Captain Sung Min Kang from his damaged ship, Soul's Pride. His vessel was barely functional, but his crew had refused to abandon their position in the pack formation. You forgot that some things are worth dying for, the Devourer. Commander was silent for long moments. When he spoke again, his voice carried something that sounded almost like confusion. Heart is inefficient. Heart leads to poor tactical decisions. Heart makes beings sacrifice themselves for others who provide no strategic advantage. Exactly, Daeho replied, and that's why you lost. The transmission ended abruptly as the surviving Devourer ships fled toward the darkness between stars. For the first time in millions of years, the perfect destroyers had been defeated by something they could not understand or overcome. Throughout the Allied fleet, the coordinated howling gradually changed from a battle cry to something else. It became a song of victory, a celebration of survival, and a promise that would echo through the galaxy for generations to come. Captain Veltar's image appeared on the communication screen. The proud Saurian who had once mocked human tactics now looked at Daeho with something approaching reverence. Fleet Commander Kim, Veltar said formally, I owe you an apology. We all do. When the Galactic Council laughed at your pack tactics, we showed our ignorance, not your weakness. No apology needed, Daeho replied. You learned when it mattered most. That's what makes you part of the pack now. Fighter Squadron Leader, Yoonji Yoon's voice came over the communication system. All fighter squadrons reporting successful return to carrier ships. Losses were minimal thanks to pack coordination. When one pilot was in trouble, 5 others came to help without being asked. The main communication screen expanded to show dozens of alien captains from throughout the fleet. Species that had never worked together before the crisis now spoke, with voices full of respect and understanding. Captain Riksdal, the insectoid commander who had first used pack tactics to save his merchant convoy, clicked his approval. The hive mind of my people is ancient, but today we learned something new. Individual loyalty can create strength that no collective intelligence can match. A crystal being named Shardtel resonated with harmonic tones that translated as deep gratitude. Our species values perfect logic above all else. Today we discovered that imperfect emotions can achieve what perfect calculations cannot. Even the mechanical synthetics had learned something from the battle. Unit Prime 7, speaking for his artificial species, made an announcement that surprised everyone. We have analyzed the battle data extensively. The pack coordination achieved tactical results that should have been impossible according to our programming. We request permission to study these emotional responses and incorporate them into our behavioral matrices. Daho smiled at that. Emotions can't be programmed, Unit Prime. They have to be felt. Then we will learn to feel, the synthetic replied with what sounded like determination. If emotion makes beings stronger, then we must evolve beyond pure logic. Ambassador Taemin Lee appeared on a private communication channel, speaking from the safety of Luna Station. Behind him, Earth hung in space like a blue and white reminder of home. Captain Kim, the Galactic Council has asked me to extend their formal gratitude. They also want to discuss making the pack tactics the standard military doctrine for all Federation forces. Tell them we'll be happy to share what we know, Daho replied. But they should understand that pack behavior can't be learned from textbooks. It has to be lived. As the fleet began the journey back toward Earth, Jiwoo made an interesting discovery. Sir, I'm detecting something unusual in our communication logs. During the battle, when all ships were howling together, the sound patterns created harmonic frequencies that I've never seen before. What kind of frequencies? So Young asked. The kind that carry across interstellar distances without losing strength. Sir, I think our pack call traveled far beyond the system. Anyone listening on the right frequencies could have heard it from dozens of light years away. Minho checked his instruments and nodded in agreement. She's right. The combined howling of 2,000 ships created a resonance effect. The sound is still traveling outward, getting stronger instead of weaker. Hyun-Soo Nam entered the bridge with his faithful companion Bayek at his side. The old dog looked tired but satisfied, like a hunter returning from a successful chase. Captain, Hyun-Soo said, Beck here has something to show you. The dog walked over to Daho and sat down, then tilted his head back and let out a long, proud howl. It was different from the mournful sounds he had made when the crisis began. This was the howl of a pack leader celebrating victory and calling his family home. Throughout the ship, other dogs and animal companions joined in. Their voices carried through the corridors, reminding everyone aboard that the bonds between species went deeper than words or treaties. You know what this means, don't you? So Young asked quietly. What? Daho replied, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Every species in the galaxy heard our pack call during the battle. They know now that the Federation has found something stronger than advanced weapons or superior numbers. They know we fight as one family, not as separate nations. 6 months later, Captain Daho Kim stood once again in the observation deck of Galactic Council Station Omega-7. But this time, he was not there to be mocked or dismissed. He was there to accept the highest honor the Federation could give. The same meeting room where aliens had laughed at human pack tactics was now filled, with representatives eager to learn those same techniques. The sound of coordinated howling could be heard from the hundreds of ships surrounding the station, as crews from dozens of species practiced the harmony that had saved the galaxy. Ambassador Taemin approached with a smile on his face. The Council has voted unanimously. The Hund Protocol is now the official defensive strategy of the Galactic Federation. Every military academy will teach pack coordination alongside traditional tactics. And the best part, added Veltar, who had become an unexpected ally, is that we're calling it exactly what you called it, the Hund Protocol, named after the ancient Earth creatures that first taught your species the power of loyalty. As Daho looked out at the gathered fleet, he could see ships from every corner of the galaxy moving in perfect pack formation. The mockery had become respect, the laughter had become harmony, and the howl that had once been dismissed as primitive. Noise now echoed from every vessel that fought for freedom. The pack had grown beyond anything he could have imagined, and its song would be heard among the stars for generations to come. The Proxima system hung in space like a collection of precious jewels. 3 human colonies orbited the red dwarf star, their cities glowing with warm light against the darkness. Over 4 million people lived on these worlds, building new lives among the stars. Captain Daho Kim watched from the bridge of Sol Guardian as his fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel. 2,000 ships spread across space in perfect formation, each crew ready to fight for something larger than themselves. Fleet status, he called to Commander So Young Park. All ships reporting ready, sir. Pack communication systems are functioning. at full capacity across the entire fleet. Through the main viewing screen, Daeho could see the enemy waiting for them. 500 Devourer ships floated in the system's outer edge, each one larger than the biggest vessel in his fleet. They were arranged in precise geometric patterns like a mathematical equation written in metal and death. "They're not moving," observed Captain Sungmin Kang from his position at the tactical display. "They're just waiting." "Machines think differently than living beings," replied Engineer Minho Bei. "They calculate odds, analyze threats, plan optimal responses. They probably see our fleet and are determining the most efficient way to destroy us." Communications Officer Ji-woo Choi looked up from her station with worry in her eyes. "Sir, I'm receiving surrender demands from the Devourer fleet. They're offering to spare the colonies if we withdraw immediately." "What's their definition of spare?" So Young asked grimly. "Quick consumption rather than slow consumption," Ji-woo replied after checking the translation. "They consider it merciful." The communication screen activated, showing Captain Veltar aboard his command ship. The proud Saurian who had once mocked humanity now looked to them for guidance. "Fleet Commander Kim," Veltar said formally. "My tactical computers show we are outnumbered 5-1 by superior vessels. Logic suggests immediate retreat." "Your computers are probably right," Daeho replied calmly. "But we're not fighting with computers today." Fighter Squadron Leader Yoon Ji-yoon's voice came over the communication system from her lead fighter. "Sir, my pilots are ready. We've been practicing pack formation for days. The alien squadrons are coordinating better than I've ever seen." "All squadrons, maintain position until the pack call," Daeho ordered. "Remember, we fight as one or we die as many." The Devourer fleet began to move. The massive black ships advanced in perfect lines, their weapons charging with energy that made space itself shimmer. They moved like a machine, precise and unstoppable. "Incoming transmission from Devourer Command," Ji-woo announced. "Put it through," Daeho ordered. The voice that filled the bridge was cold and emotionless, speaking in perfect galactic standard. "We are the Devourers. We are perfection. We have calculated your defeat in 4.7 minutes. Surrender now and your death will be efficient." "This is Fleet Commander Kim of the Galactic Defense Force," Daeho replied. "We decline your offer. You fight for emotional concepts, love, loyalty, honor. These things make you weak. We fight for perfection. We cannot be defeated by inferior beings driven by primitive feelings." "You're probably right," Daeho said with a slight smile. "But there's one thing your calculations didn't account for. State your variable. We're not fighting as individuals, we're fighting as a pack." Daeho closed the communication channel and activated the fleet-wide system. "All ships, this is your pack leader. Today we hunt together. Today we howl together. Today we show the galaxy what happens when family is threatened." The first Devourer attack came exactly as predicted. Massive energy beams lanced across space, targeting the largest ships in the Allied fleet. But instead of the orderly defensive formation the machines expected, something else happened. Every ship in the human fleet began to howl. The sound started with Soul Guardian, a deep, rising call that carried across the communication channels to every vessel in the fleet. Soul's Pride answered immediately, followed by dozens of other human ships. Within seconds, the howling spread to alien vessels as species after species joined their voices to the pack call. The Devourer weapons struck empty space. In the time it took their targeting computers to lock on, the Allied ships had moved. Not in calculated patterns, but in response to the pack call. Each captain knew exactly where to go without being told, following instincts that had been awakened during their training. "Impossible," came the cold voice of the Devourer commander. "Your ships moved without receiving movement orders. Our sensors detected no tactical communications." "That's because you don't understand what you're hearing," Daeho replied as his ship dove toward the enemy formation. "The howl isn't just sound. It's the voice of the pack." The battle became unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of organized formations and calculated maneuvers, the Allied fleet moved like a living thing. Ships protected each other, without orders, coordinated attacks without planning. and responded to threats with pure instinct. Squadron leader Yunji led her mixed fighter groups in sweeping attacks that confused the Devourer targeting systems. When her fighters howled together, they moved as one creature with 100 wings. Captain Veltar's ship found itself surrounded by 3 Devourer vessels. In the old days, he would have calculated escape routes and surrender options. Instead, he opened his communication channel and let out a Saurian war cry that shook his entire ship. Every Allied vessel within range heard the call and responded, rushing to his aid without being asked. "This behavior is inefficient," the Devourer commander announced, as his perfect formations began to falter. "You are sacrificing tactical advantage for emotional responses?" "Yes," Deho replied as Soul Guardian fired everything it had at the nearest enemy ship. "And that's exactly why we're going to win." The turning point came when Captain Sungmin's ship, Soul's Pride, took critical damage from multiple Devourer vessels. His engines were failing, his weapons were offline, and his crew was preparing for the worst. But instead of accepting defeat, Sungmin did something that no Devourer computer could have predicted. He opened all communication channels and let out one final defiant howl. It was the sound of a pack member calling for help, the cry of someone who refused to die alone. Every ship in the Allied fleet heard that call. And every ship responded. The howling that followed was unlike anything that had ever echoed through space. 2,000 ships, representing dozens of species who had once been strangers, joined their voices in a harmony of rage and loyalty. The sound was so powerful that it overloaded communication systems across the battlefield. But more importantly, it overloaded something in the Devourer ships as well. The enemy vessels, designed to process and analyze all input, suddenly found themselves trying to understand something that made no logical sense. The howling carried emotional data that their systems couldn't process. Love, loyalty, sacrifice, and hope flooded their analytical programs like a virus. For the first time, in millions of years, the Devourers experienced something they had never been programmed to handle: confusion. "What is this sound?" the Devourer commander demanded, his perfect voice now showing signs of strain. "Our systems cannot analyze its tactical purpose." "It doesn't have a tactical purpose," Deho replied as the Allied fleet pressed their attack. "It's the sound of beings who refuse to let their family die alone." As the howling continued, more and more Devourer ships began to malfunction. Their perfect coordination broke down as their computers struggled to understand the emotional data flooding their systems. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, the machines were learning what every pack hunter knew. Sometimes, the strongest weapon isn't logic or technology. Sometimes it's the simple refusal to give up on those you love. Captain Daeho Kim stood in the command center of the combined fleet, watching as ships from dozens of species gathered around Earth. In just 12 hours, the Galactic Council had done something unprecedented. They had given complete military command to a human. The irony was not lost on him. 3 weeks ago, these same aliens had laughed at human tactics. Now they desperately hoped those same tactics could save them all. "Fleet status report," Daeho called out to his expanded bridge crew. Commander So Young Park checked her displays. 2,000 ships assembled and ready. We have vessels from 18 different species, all waiting for orders. Captain Sungmin. Kang stepped forward from the communications array. His ship, Soul's Pride, was one of the largest human vessels in the fleet. Like Daeho, he had grown up hearing stories of ancient warriors and faithful companions. "Sir," Sungmin said, "the alien captains are asking about the Hund protocol. They want to know how it works." Daeho nodded. He had expected this. "Begin the training program. Every ship in this fleet needs to understand pack coordination before we face the Devourers." Engineer Minho Bay looked up from his technical station. "Captain, I've finished installing the pack communication systems on all human ships. The alien vessels are proving more difficult. Their technology doesn't interface well with our audio coordination methods." "Keep working on it," Daeho ordered. "If they can't howl with the pack, they need to at least understand what the howling means." Fighter Squadron Leader Yoonji Yoon entered the command center, still wearing her flight suit. She was small and quick, with eyes that missed nothing. Behind her walked her wingman and closest friend, pilot Jin Han. "Sir," Yunji reported, "my squadron has been practicing the Howl formation with mixed alien fighter groups. The results are interesting." "Explain," So Young said. "The aliens are trying to copy our movements exactly," Jinny answered. "They think it's about precise positioning and timing. But it's not," Yunji continued. "When we demonstrated real pack coordination, where each pilot responds to the pack call by instinct rather than calculation, the formation became 3 times more effective." Daeho smiled grimly. "Did you explain this to the alien pilots?" "We tried, sir. Most of them don't understand. They keep asking for detailed technical specifications for something that can't be programmed into a computer." The main communication screen activated, showing images from throughout the fleet. Alien crew members were attempting to learn human pack tactics with varying degrees of success. Some species seemed to grasp the concept quickly. Others appeared, completely confused by the idea of emotional coordination. "Captain Kim," called a voice from the communication array. It was Captain Veltar, the same Saurian who had mocked humanity at the council meeting. He was now aboard his own ship, trying to learn the tactics he had once dismissed. "Yes, Captain Veltar," Daeho replied formally. "My crew is having difficulty with your pack training. We understand the formation patterns, but this howling behavior makes no sense to our tactical computers." "That's because you're thinking like a machine," Sungmin said bluntly. "The howl isn't for computers, it's for hearts." Veltar's image on the screen showed clear frustration. "Hearts do not win battles. Logic and firepower win battles. Tell that to the 2 million people who died at Kepler," Yunji said quietly. The communication channel fell silent. After a moment, Veltar spoke again, his voice less certain than before. "What do you need us to do?" Before Daeho could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the command center. Jiwoo Choi spun around from her sensor station, her face pale with fear. "Captain, I'm detecting distress signals from the Vega system. Multiple ships under attack." The main display filled with chaotic images from a cargo convoy that had been traveling between colonies. 3 Devourer ships, smaller than the Planet Killers but still massive, were systematically destroying every vessel they encountered. "Time to intercept?" So Young asked. 4 hours at maximum speed," Minho calculated quickly. "Too long," Daeho said grimly. "By the time we arrive, there won't be anyone left to save." But as they watched the desperate battle on their screens, something unexpected happened. Captain Rixdahl, an insectoid commander whose ship was part of the convoy, began transmitting on an open channel. "All ships, this is Rixdahl of the merchant vessel Golden Wing. We cannot outrun these creatures. We cannot outfight them with conventional tactics." His voice paused, then continued with surprising determination. "But perhaps we can try something unconventional." To everyone's amazement, Rixdahl's ship began emitting sounds similar to the human pack calls. The howling was rough and unpracticed, but it carried the same desperate energy that Daeho had heard from Earth's dogs. Other ships in the convoy began to respond. Within minutes, the entire merchant fleet was howling together, while moving in loose pack formation. The Devourer ships, programmed to expect logical retreat or organized resistance, seemed confused by the chaotic but coordinated response. "By the stars," Veltar whispered over the open channel. "It's actually working. The merchant ships couldn't destroy the Devourers, but their pack tactics allowed them to survive long enough for a military patrol to arrive. When the rescue ships joined the howling chorus, the Devourer vessels retreated into deep space." "Captain Rixdahl," Daeho called over the communication system. "Outstanding work. How did you know to try pack coordination?" Rixdahl's compound eyes glittered with something that might have been pride. "I watched the training recordings you sent to all fleet commanders. I thought about my own species' behavior when we protect our hives. Perhaps packs and hives are not so different." This revelation spread quickly through the combined fleet. Species after species began to understand that pack coordination was not about copying human behavior exactly. It was about finding the emotional bonds that made groups fight as one instead of many. The Saurians found strength in their ancient clan loyalties, The crystal beings discovered harmony in their natural resonance frequencies. Even the mechanical synthetics learned to synchronize their processing cycles in ways that created primitive emotional responses. Fleet status update. So Young announced. 95% of all ships now have functioning pack communication systems. Crew coordination efficiency has improved by 400% across all species. Yun-Su Nam entered the command center with Bayek at his side. The dog's ears were alert, but he no longer seemed anxious. Instead, he appeared ready like a hunter prepared for the chase. "Sir," Hyun-Su reported, "the animals throughout the fleet are responding to the pack training. Even species that have never seen Earth dogs are learning to work together. It's like they remember something their ancestors once knew." Daeho nodded slowly. "Perhaps they do. Perhaps the need to belong to something larger than yourself isn't unique to humanity." The communication screen showed images from throughout the combined fleet. Aliens who had once mocked human emotion were now howling together, their voices joining in harmonies that would have been impossible just days before. "Captain," Jiwoo called out urgently. "Long-range sensors are detecting the main Devourer fleet. They're moving toward Proxima Centauri, estimated arrival in 6 hours. All ships," Daeho announced over the fleet communication system. "This is Fleet Commander Kim. Set course for Proxima. It's time to show the Devourers what happens when the pack decides to hunt." Throughout the fleet, 2,000 ships began to move as one. And for the first time in galactic history, the sound of coordinated howling echoed from vessels belonging to dozens of different species. The pack was ready. The hunt would begin soon. 3 weeks after the humiliating council meeting, Captain Daeho Kim stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Soul Guardian. The massive ship floated in Earth's orbital defense grid, far from the mockery of alien politicians. Here, surrounded by his own crew, he could think clearly about what had happened at Station Omega-7. Communications Officer Jiwoo Choi sat at her station, monitoring deep space sensors. She was young, barely 25, but she had the best ears in the human fleet. If something was moving in the dark between stars, Jiwoo would hear it first. "Captain," Jiwoo called out, her voice tight with concern. "I'm getting strange readings from the outer rim sensors." Daeho walked over to her station. The displays showed wave patterns that looked wrong somehow. They were too regular, too organized to be natural space phenomena. "What kind of readings?" he asked. "Something big, sir. Multiple objects moving at incredible speed. They're coming from the direction of the void beyond Sector 12. So Young Park looked up from the tactical display where she was reviewing fleet positions. "How big are we talking about?" Jiwoo adjusted her instruments, trying to get clearer readings. "Each object is at least 10 kilometers long. There are dozens of them, maybe hundreds." The bridge fell silent. Nothing that large moved through space naturally, and nothing built by any known species was that massive either. "Send an alert to Fleet Command," Daeho ordered, "and get me Ambassador Taemin on a secure channel." While Jiwoo worked at her communications array, veteran pilot Hyun-Su Nam entered the bridge. He was an older man with gray hair and scars from the colony wars. Unlike most officers, he was never alone. A large dog with brown and black fur walked beside him, ears alert and eyes intelligent. "Captain," Hyun-Su said, "my partner here has been restless for 3 days. Dogs can sense things we cannot. Something has him worried." The dog, whose name was Beck, looked directly at Daeho and whined softly. It was an unusual sound, full of warning and unease. "First the sensors, now the dogs," So Young muttered. "I don't like where this is heading." The main communication screen flickered to life, showing Ambassador Taemin in his office on Luna Station. Behind him, through a large window, Earth hung like a blue and white jewel against the black of space. "Captain Kim," Taemin said formally, "I hope you have good news. The Galactic Council is still discussing our military capabilities with considerable amusement." "I'm afraid not, Ambassador," Daeho replied. "We're detecting unknown objects approaching from deep space, large objects moving fast." Taemin's expression grew serious. "How large?" 10 kilometers or more each, possibly hundreds of them." Before Taemin could respond, Alarms began sounding throughout the bridge. Jiwoo's hands flew over her controls as new data poured in from the long-range sensors. "Captain," she shouted over the alarms. "The objects just dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They're in the Kepler system 3 light-years from here." "Visual contact?" So Young asked. "Working on it, ma'am." Jiwoo's fingers danced across her keyboard. "Got it. Putting it on main screen now." The bridge display filled with an image that made everyone gasp. Massive black ships hung in space around Kepler 442b, a colony world with 2 million human settlers. The ships were unlike anything in the galactic databases. They were not built, they were grown. Metal and machinery twisted together like living tissue, creating vessels that looked both ancient and terrible. "By all the stars," Taman whispered from the communication screen. "What are those things?" His answer came from the worst possible source. The alien ships began moving toward Kepler 442b. Energy beams, brighter than small suns, lanced out from the black vessels. Where they touched the planet's surface, everything simply disappeared. Not destroyed, not vaporized, but gone as if it had never existed. "They're eating the planet," Hyun-soo said in horror. His dog pressed against his leg, sensing his master's fear. Within minutes, the thriving colony world was nothing but empty space and drifting debris. 2 million people gone without a trace. "Get me the Galactic Council," Taman said, his voice shaking. "Emergency priority." The communication screen split to show the council chamber. Veltar and the other representatives were in heated discussion, but they fell silent when they saw the images from the Kepler system. "What are we looking at?" Veltar demanded. "Unknown hostile forces," Daeho reported. "They just consumed an entire planet in less than 10 minutes. Crixtal's compound eyes reflected the light from the tactical displays. "This is impossible. No known technology can do such a thing." "It's not unknown," said a new voice. An elderly alien that looked like a walking tree stepped forward. This was Elder Nim from the Archive Worlds, keeper of ancient knowledge. "Speak," Veltar ordered. "They are called the Devourers," Elder Nim said, his voice like wind through old leaves. "Legends say they were the first mechanical race, created billions of years ago by a species that sought to make perfect warriors. Instead, they made perfect destroyers." "Legends," Crixtal scoffed. "Myths and stories." "Not anymore," Jiwoo interrupted from her station. "I'm tracking their movement. They're heading for the next closest inhabited system, Proxima Centauri. 3 human colonies, 1 alien research station." The council chamber erupted in panic. Representatives from dozens of species began shouting orders and questions, but through the chaos, Daeho heard something else. Beck, Hyun-soo's dog, had begun to howl. It was a long, mournful sound that seemed to carry all the grief of a world lost. "How long do we have?" Veltar asked, his earlier arrogance replaced by fear. Jiwoo checked her calculations twice before answering. "At their current speed, 18 hours until they reach Proxima." "Impossible," said the crystal representative who had mocked humanity weeks before. "We need time to mobilize the fleet, coordinate defenses, plan strategies." "There is no time," Elder Nim replied sadly. "The Devourers do not negotiate. They do not retreat. They consume everything in their path until nothing remains." So Young stepped forward. "What about evacuation?" "Where?" Veltar snapped. "If these creatures are as powerful as the Elder claims, nowhere in the galaxy is safe." Taemin cleared his throat. "The Council requested a demonstration of human military capabilities. You rejected our methods as primitive and emotional. This is not the time for petty grievances," Crixtal buzzed angrily. "No," Daeho said firmly. "This is exactly the time. You wanted to see what humanity could offer. You laughed at our pack tactics. You mocked our emotional approach to warfare." He gestured to the tactical display showing the approaching Devourer fleet. "Cold logic and perfect calculation created these monsters. Maybe it's time to try something different." Veltar's yellow eyes narrowed. "You're suggesting your animal behavior tactics can succeed where advanced civilizations have failed?" He's saying that when perfect predators hunt, Sometimes the only defense is a pack that refuses to run. Behind Hyunsu, Bayek's howl was joined by other sounds. Throughout the ship, the few dogs that served with human crews had begun to sing. It was not the coordinated battle howl of the Hund protocol. This was something older, deeper. The sound that wolves made when they mourned their dead and prepared to fight for the living. The Devourers are machines, Daeho continued. They think like machines. They expect logical responses, calculated retreats, reasonable surrender. And instead? Taemin asked. Daeho smiled grimly. Instead, they're going to meet a pack that doesn't know how to quit. The communication screen showed dozens of alien faces staring at him with mixtures of hope and skepticism. In the background, the mournful howling of Earth's ancient companions continued, carrying a promise that had been made 10,000 years ago beside flickering fires. The pack would not abandon its own. The hunt was about to begin. Captain Daeho Kim stood in the observation deck of Galactic Council Station Omega-7, watching the endless stars through the massive viewing window. 6 months had passed since humanity joined the Galactic Federation. 6 months of trying to prove they belonged among the stars with creatures who had been traveling space for thousands of years. Behind him, Commander So Young Park checked her datapad for the 3rd time. She had known Daeho since they were children, in Busan, playing soldier games by the harbor. Now they were real soldiers representing their entire species before aliens who could destroy Earth with a single command. The council members are arriving, So Young said quietly. Ambassador Taemin is already in the meeting room. Daeho nodded but did not turn from the window. Out there, hundreds of alien ships floated in perfect formation around the station. Each ship was larger than anything humans had ever built. Each one carried weapons that could turn planets to dust. Are you ready for this? So Young asked. No, Daeho replied honestly, but we have to try. The meeting room was enormous. The ceiling stretched so high that clouds could have formed near the top. Representatives from dozens of alien species sat in chairs designed for their various body types. Some were tall and thin like walking trees. Others were short and wide like living rocks. A few floated in tanks of liquid that glowed with soft blue light. Ambassador Taemin Lee sat at the human table, looking small compared to the aliens around him. He wore his best diplomatic uniform, but it seemed plain next to the elaborate clothing and natural features of the other representatives. Veltar, the representative from the Saurian Dominion, was speaking when Daeho and So Young entered. His voice was deep and cold, like winter wind through empty caves. The new members must prove their military worth, Veltar was saying. His scales were dark green, and his eyes were yellow like old gold. We cannot accept weak allies when war threatens our borders. Crixtal, who looked like a giant insect with 4 arms and compound eyes, clicked his agreement. The humans are young. Their technology is basic. What can they offer that we do not already possess in greater measure? Taemin stood up slowly. Honored council members, Captain Kim and Commander Park have prepared a demonstration of our naval tactics. We hope you will find them interesting. Veltar made a sound that might have been laughter. Very well. Show us what your species has learned in your brief time among the stars. Daeho walked to the center of the room where a holographic display waited. With a few touches on the control panel, the space above them filled with images of human ships. Dozens of vessels appeared, moving in careful patterns around a simulated enemy fleet. This is Formation 7, Daeho began. We call it the Hund protocol. The alien representatives leaned forward to watch. The human ships moved in groups, surrounding the enemy vessels like hunters circling prey. But there was something else in the display, something the aliens had not expected. Sound came from the hologram. It was not the usual communication chatter between ships. It was something else entirely. A long, rising call that seemed to come from the depths of space itself. Other ships answered with similar calls, creating a complex pattern of sounds that rose and fell like music. So Young activated her own control panel. Each ship group has a lead vessel, she explained. When the lead ship calls, the others respond. This creates perfect coordination without complex computer systems. The sounds in the hologram grew stronger. More ships joined the calls until the entire fleet was singing together in a harmony that made the meeting room vibrate slightly. The pattern tells each ship exactly where to move and when, Deho continued. No delay from computer processing, no confusion from damaged communication systems. Each captain knows their place in the pack. The word pack seemed to trigger something in the alien representatives. Veltar's yellow eyes grew wide. Krixtal's compound eyes glittered with what might have been amusement. Did you say pack? Veltar asked, his voice dripping with disbelief. Yes, Deho replied firmly. The formation is based on hunting patterns used by Earth creatures called dogs. They were companions to humans for thousands of years before we reached the stars. The meeting room fell silent for a moment. Then Veltar began to laugh. It was not a pleasant sound. Other alien representatives joined in, creating a chorus of clicks, whistles, and roars that echoed off the high ceiling. Pack animals, Krixtal chittered. They model their war strategies after pack animals. How wonderfully primitive, added another representative. A floating creature that looked like a jellyfish made of silver light. They howl like beasts before battle. Veltar stood up, his impressive height making him tower over the human delegation. You name your military formations after domestic creatures? You make animal sounds during combat? He shook his head in disbelief. We expected advanced tactics from a species capable of space travel. Instead, you offer us the behavior of simple-minded pets. Taemin tried to speak, but his voice was lost in the continued laughter of the council members. Deho felt heat rise in his face. So Young's hand moved to rest on her sidearm, though she knew it would be useless here. The formations are highly effective, Deho said loudly, trying to speak over the mockery. In our war games, fleets using the Hund protocol have achieved victory rates of over 90%. Against other human fleets, no doubt, Veltar replied dismissively. Children playing with toys. When real war comes, emotion makes you weak. Your attachment to these animal behaviors will be your downfall. Another representative, a creature that looked like walking crystal, added her voice to the criticism. Successful military action requires cold logic and perfect calculation. These emotional displays you call tactics are nothing more than theater. The holographic display was still running, showing human ships moving in their coordinated patterns, while the pack calls echoed through the room. But now the sound seemed foolish instead of impressive. The careful formations looked simple instead of sophisticated. Krixtal gestured with one of his forearms. Perhaps these humans should return to their homeworld and practice with their animal friends before attempting to join civilized warfare. The laughter grew louder. Deho closed the holographic display with sharp, angry movements. The pack calls faded away, leaving only the cruel amusement of the alien council. The demonstration is complete, Taemin said stiffly. We thank the council for their time and attention. Indeed, Veltar replied, still chuckling. Most educational. We now understand exactly what humanity brings to our alliance. As the human delegation prepared to leave, So Young leaned close to Deho and whispered, They have no idea what they just mocked. Deho nodded grimly. No, they do not. But someday they will understand. When the pack howls in anger instead of greeting, they will learn what our ancestors knew. The hunt is not about the individual hunter. It is about the pack. They walked from the meeting room in silence, leaving behind the continued laughter of species who thought themselves superior. Behind them, the alien representatives continued their mockery, unaware that they had just made a terrible mistake. The pack had been insulted, and the pack would remember.